Hello, can you all hear me? Okay, so now I'll be starting with the lecture. Earlier, we cannot be able to start it because there was some network error and this was not coming out of it. Okay. So now your today topic is circulatory system. So now we'll start it. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to define circulatory system, to describe various function of circulatory system, to describe histology of heart, to describe histology of parts of vasculature system. Okay. Now, introductions. First is what is basically a circulatory system? It is a system of vessels through which the blood passes to the tissue by continuous contraction of the heart. That is why it is called as blood and hemopoiesis system. So basically, this is what it is. So the blood vascular system formed of the heart, the arteries, veins, and capillaries. You have to remember this. So there is heart, there is arteries, there is veins, and there is capillaries. So all these things would be there. Okay, now coming up to now what is CVS? So what is heart? Just a small introduction. Heart is basically an organ whose function is to pump the blood. Arteries, a series of efferent vessels that become smaller as they branch into various organs. Then you will have capillaries, so the smallest blood vessels they are. What they do is the site of oxygen and carbon dioxide. See, you should know that basically the function of the blood is to provide the nutrients to the organs as well as to supply the oxygen. So what they do is they carry the oxygenated blood from the heart and supply it to the different organs, and they carry deoxygenated blood and supply it to the heart so that it becomes oxygenated. So this is how the whole system will run. Then what are the functions? So function, as I have discussed with you, transport of oxygen and nutrient substance to the tissues, transport of carbon dioxide and waste product from the tissue, regulation of the body temperature, and transport of hormones and large molecules. Now there are basic layer. What are the basic layers of circulatory system? So the inner layer you have to remember is called as tunica intima, the middle layer tunica media, and outer layer tunica adventitia. So the inner layer is called as tunica intima, the middle layer is called as tunica media, and outer layer is called as your tunica adventitia. So that has to be there. Now, first organ, that is your heart. So definition, it is a muscular organ which is located in your in the middle of the chest. It is function pumping of the blood. So this you have to remember. Then it is formed of four chambers, two atria and two ventricles. Okay, that communicate with atrioventricular orifice. This you must have learned in your anatomy also. Okay, so now the right side of the heart carry non-oxygenated blood and the left carry oxygenated. So see, in summary, you just have to remember that basically this heart is a muscular organ and the function of the heart is to pump the blood. Now it has two atrium and two ventricle, and they function through atrioventricular orifice. The orifice means there is an opening into. And the right side of the heart carry oxygenated blood, and the left side of the heart carry non-oxygenated blood. Sorry, the opposite way. Now see this. So this is all it is there. So this is the heart. It will have your, this is all your atrium and this is all your ventricular. This is your aorta. That's the main this thing. So all these functions are there. Now the heart has three major layers: the epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium. So there are three layers: epi, myo, and endocardium. So the inner endocardium, the myocardium is the center one, and the other one, the extreme distinct lower one is the endocardium. So if you can see into this picture, so this is your heart. This is basically a cut section to make you understand the layers of the heart. So this is your epicardium. The outer layer is called as your epicardium. The middle layer is called as your myocardium, and the inner layer is called as your endocardium. So now there is endocardium in which there is endothelium. So what does it made up of? It is made up of connective tissue with smooth muscle cells. Then there would be subendothelial also, which is below the endothelium. If you can see into this picture, I'll show it with the help of a pointer. So this is your endothelium. Now below to it will be your subendothelium. Okay. Then what is endothelium? So it is basically a unique. Yeah. Okay. So basically, and what is endothelium? So see, first of all, see this picture. In this picture, the upper layer is called as your endothelium. Okay. Below to that, in which you are seeing this arrow, is basically your subendothelium. And this is your myocardial layer or your myocardium, in which your muscle cells are there, cardiac muscle cells are there. Okay. So what is endothelium? Endothelium is a single layer of squamous epithelium. So if you can see, this is your single layer of squamous epithelium that line the internal surface of the components of the blood. Functions with what? It acts as a selectively permeable membrane, determines when and where the blood cells leaves and go. So that way. So what are the functions of endothelial cells? The functions of endothelial cells are non-thrombogenic surface. So basically, they provides that there shouldn't be any clotting of the blood, regulate local vascular tone and blood flow, inflammation in local immune cells. Yes, we will give you the lecture. Don't worry. I'll show you, give you the lecture. Don't worry. I will email you the lecture or I will send it to Yazan so that Yazan can forward it to all. Okay? Is that okay? Okay, great, 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 great. Yes, yes, yes. After the class, I'll send you the lecture. Don't worry. What do you guys want? Okay, okay, sure. I will send you. Don't worry. After the lecture, I will send you. Yeah. So now what are the functions of endothelial cells? For thrombogenic, non-thrombogenic surface, to regulate your local vascular tone and blood flow. By that it means that the blood flow should be normal, because at times when there is a abnormality in the flow of the blood, there might be chances that blood could clot at some point of time. In the terminology, we call it as the stasis of the blood, the normal stasis of the blood. Okay. Then it also helps in inflammation and local immune response. Then it secrete growth factors also. So these all are the functions. Now coming up to next is your subendothelial. So subendothelial is what? It is basically, it consists of what? Small nerves. Now it consists one interesting thing, that is your uh, Purkinje fibers, or we call it as conducting fibers. See, basically, our heart needs to pump all the time. This is one organ which doesn't rest. It has to pump blood day and night, 24 hours. So for that, there has to be generation of some conducting nerves which helps, or conducting system which helps in the normal pumping action of the heart. So those conducting system is basically consists of Purkinje fibers. So that you have to remember, that is important. So basically these fibers are cardiac muscle cells joined by intercalated disc, but specialized for impulse conduction rather than contraction. So basically they conduct the waves. Okay. So now the second slide is the cardiac conducting system, which I have told you. So now this system consists of two nodes. Now that name you have to remember: the sino-arterial node and your atrioventricular node. So SA node and AV node, and the atrioventricular bundle. So these terms, guys, I'm sorry, but you have to remember, because these all terms are as it is. We cannot explain much into it. So basically, it consists of your SA node, sinoatrial node, then your AV node, atrioventricular node, and your atrioventricular bundle of His. So don't go into the detail, just that you should know that what are the things that are involved in cardiac conducting system. So if anybody asks you And what are the things that are involved in cardiac conducting system? You should tell SA node, AV node, then your bundle of His, Purkinje fibers. These all are the things that are important. So if you can look into this picture, this is basically your histopathological section of Purkinje fibers, in which this is your endothelium, and all these structures that you are seeing is basically your fibers, Purkinje fibers. Okay. Now what is myocardium? So now myocardium, as the name suggests, it's the middle layer. So now myocardium is the thickest layer, consists mainly of cardiac muscles with its fibers arranged spirally around each heart muscle. So see, this is your myocardium. If you remember our muscle tissue lecture, there was all these myocardial cells. Okay, so these cells are there. So it basically consists of your cardiac muscle cells, which are arranged spirally. So can you see these arrangements? These all are arranged spirally. Okay, so these all things would be there. What is epicardium? Now, epicardium is basically the simple squamous mesothelium coated by layer of connective tissue containing blood vessels and nerves. So basically, see into this, you will see the connective tissue. This is your connective tissue. These all are your fat cells. Okay, these all are your muscles. So all these things would be there. Now, in this epicardium is the site of coronary vessels and contains considerable adipose tissue. So if you can see into these pictures, these all are your fat cells. If you remember, we discussed fat cells. Those are the empty cells. Okay. Now, cardiac skeleton. Now, basically, what is cardiac skeleton? Now, cardiac skeleton is the mass of dense, irregular connective tissue. It basically surrounds the base of the heart walls, separates the atria from the ventricle, and provide insertion of cardiac muscles. Now, in simple language, if I'll tell you that basically all the muscles, all the chambers that are present, the atrium, the ventricle, in order to provide it a structure, is what the function of the cardiac skeleton is to provide them a structure. That is why it is saying that it surrounds the bases of all the heart walls, separates the atria from the ventricle, and provides insertion of cardiac muscles. So these all things would be there. Along with it, these fibrous tissue includes chorda tendini. What is chorda tendini? The cords that extend from the cusp and the chorda tendini to which they attach. So basically, if I'm asking you about cardiac skeleton, you should be able to say that it is basically provides the structure to the heart. It separates atria to the ventricle. It provides the base to the heart wall. So all these things would have to be there. So what is the function? What is the cardiac skeletal function? So firstly, it anchors and support the heart valves, which we have already discussed. Provide firm points of insertion for cardiac muscles. This is also we have discussed. Now helps coordinate the heartbeat by acting as a electrical insulation between atria and ventricle. Now see, this you need to understand. Basically, when we are talking about an heartbeat, we all have an heartbeat till the point of time we are living. So this has to be generated through a series of actions, in which the roles is the conducting system. They will provide rhythm. The pacemakers, which we normally call it as, it helps in the proper conduction of the rhythm of the heart, so that heart will function in a proper manner. By rhythm means that it should have a proper what do you call as a proper balance between your contraction and relaxation. So one of the function of cardiac skeletal is to provide or regulate the heartbeat. That is in the conduction of the heart. So that would be there. Now that was about heart. So if I want to summarize about heart, what I have to summarize is, first of all, we will start with the structure. So heart is basically what? It is basically your muscular organ. So what is the function of the heart? Is to provide blood to the other organs. How does they do? What does they have? So it basically consists of your two atrial, two ventricle. All these system will be there. How they are separated? Through atrioventricular orifice. Now, this is one part. Second is if we are talking about the layers of the heart. So it basically consists of your endocardium, myocardium, epicardium. So these layers you need to remember. Okay. Now endothelium, subendothelial, myocardium or epicardium would be there. Okay. And third thing would be your what? Cardiac conducting system. Now, what is cardiac conducting system? It consists of four things more importantly that you need to remember. AV system, okay, atrioventricular node, then your bundle of His, then your Purkinje fibers. Okay, so all these things would be there. So you will have your atrioventricular node, and you will have your sinoatrial node, then you will have your atrioventricular bundle of His and Purkinje fibers. Four things you have to remember. Okay. Then coming up to cardiac skeleton. So what is the function of the cardiac skeleton? Is to anchor and support the heart walls. Then it helps in separating atria from the ventricle. Then it provides firm point of insertion of cardiac muscles. All these things you have to remember. So that was about heart. Now we are be talking about vasculature. So we basically what are vasculatures? So vasculatures are basically your vessels, veins, capillaries, I mean arteries, veins and capillaries. These things you have to remember in vasculature. So the arterial system, basically the arterial system carry the oxygenated blood from the heart to the capillaries. So what are the function of the arterial system? The main function is to carry the oxygenated blood from the heart to the capillaries. According to the size of the arteries, they are basically large, medium or small. So they are basically large, medium or small arteries. Now the histological structure of the arteries. So now this you have to know. So now what would be there? It is form of three basic layer. Now if you remember, initially I have told you that basically the circulatory system is made up of three layers. What are those? Tunica intima, tunica media, and tunica externa or adventitia. Now in this picture, if you can see, the outer layer is called as your tunica, the inner layer is called as your tunica intima, and you will have the middle layer tunica media, and then you will have tunica externa, or it is also called as your tunica adventitia or externa. This the name itself suggests that this is an external layer. So the tunica intima formed of simple squamous epithelium called the endothelium, which you already read. Then tunica media, it is a thick layer formed of smooth muscles. So basically you can call it as myocardium also. Why? Because they are basically consist of smooth muscles. Okay. Then tunica externa or adventitia, it is formed of collagen fibers and small vessels called vasa vasorum. Okay. So you have to remember that the arteries, it is form of three basic layers. Remember the name of the layers. So this is the histopathic section in which you are seeing this is your single layer of endothelium cells. In it, there will be internal elastic lamina, there will be tunica media, and there will be tunica adventitia. So all these things would be there. Now coming up to your histological structure of your medium artery. Again, it is the same. You just have to read it. Again, it is same. The intima, media, adventitia. So do not go much into the detail. So see, this is your cut section or a cross section of it, in which that would be your intima, the internal layer, media, and outer layer is your adventitia. Okay. This is not much about to discuss. So all these things would be there. This is again a histologic section. Now, what are the types of arteries? That was the layers of the arteries. What are the types of arteries? There are three main arteries: the elastic artery, muscular artery, and arterioles. Okay, remember that. Elastic artery, muscular artery, and your arterioles. Elastic artery, these arteries that receive blood directly from the heart. So they receive blood directly from the heart, aorta and the pulmonary artery. So in your heart, you will have aorta, pulmonary artery. So those are the one which are called as elastic artery. They need to be elastic. Why? What is the reason? They are relatively thin compared to their diameter. Secondly, when the heart contracts and ejects blood into these arteries, the walls needs to stretch to accommodate the blood surge, storing energy. Now I'll explain you to simple language. See, for example, the blood is undergoing contraction, and when it is undergoing contraction, it is about to release the blood into these arteries. Now, if these arteries are not elastic, and by the term elastic means that they should be flexible enough to stretch and to relax, that is called as elasticity. Firmness is what? When it does not stretch or relax, it is very firm. And soft is when it is always soft. But in elasticity, what is happening is that when there is a tension that is required for it to stretch, it will stretch. And after that tension is released, it will get back to its original shape. So it has an elasticity property. And that is what is needed in this. That when the heart contracts, injects blood into these arteries, the walls needs to stretch to accommodate the blood surge, storing energy. Then you will have muscular arteries. Now these arteries distribute blood to various parts of the body. So now the function of this is, once the heart oxygenated the blood, supply it to the pulmonary artery and aorta. From there it goes to the muscular artery, and then it distributes blood to various parts of the body. These includes arteries such as your femoral artery and your coronary artery. Okay. The walls of these arteries have lot of smooth muscles, which means they are able to contract or relax to change the amount of blood delivered as needed. So this is the cut section of your muscular artery. Then you will have arteriole. Now in arteriole, larger arterioles have a lumen less than 100 to 300. Arterioles are smaller arteries that deliver blood to capillaries, and arterioles contains blood flow through capillary beds by contracting or dilating the size of the lumen, and therefore like this. So basically arterioles are what? It is basically a larger arterioles have a lumen less than. Arterioles are smaller arteries. So you just have to remember that arterioles are smaller arteries that deliver blood to capillaries. And again, it also have three layers. The capillaries. Now, what is the capillary? So basically, it is an interconnected thin wall vessel through which the material exchange between the blood and the tissue. So it acts as a semi-permeable membrane from which the connection happens. And the blood reaches the capillaries through small arteries called precapillary and leave it through small venules called postvenules. So you have to remember in this that the blood that enter into the capillaries are from where? Are from precapillary, and the blood that exit from the capillary are through your postvenules. So this you have to remember. Now histologic structure of your capillary. How does it look like? See, if you can see into the picture, this is your arterioles. From arterioles it goes to capillaries. From capillaries it goes to venules. From venules it goes to vein. So this is how it is. Okay. So basically the wall of the capillaries is thin and formed of layer of endothelium of flat cells rest on the basement membrane. Epithelium formed of many types according to the following. The diameter of the capillary, there are two types: small capillaries and your large capillaries, depending upon the diameter. Okay. If you can see into this picture also, there is all these small capillaries. These all are large capillaries that you can see based on the diameter. Then next slide is histologic structure of capillaries. Now, how does it look? So the capillaries have a high layer of have a single layer of your flattened endothelial cells. Now, can you see into this? So this is basically your one endothelial cell. So it does have your flattened endothelial cells. Now the thinness of your capillaries helps efficient exchange between the lumen of the capillary and the surrounding tissue. So there has to be an exchange. Okay. Now the continuous capillaries have pericytes. If you can see, there is a yellow color cell. So this is called as your pericyte. So the continuous capillaries have pericytes associated with them, lie just underneath the endothelium of blood capillaries, and are source of new fibroblasts. You just have to remember And it is basically capillaries consist of what? It consists of your flattened endothelial cells, and it also consists of your pericytes. Just remember this simple thing. Now there are three types of capillaries. First is your continuous capillaries. In continuous capillaries, if you can see, there is no opening. Okay, so this is called as continuous. Now fenestrated means when there are multiple openings. So if you can see these small dotted lines, these all are your multiple openings. Now there is something called as sinusoid. So basically sinusoid is what? It is basically what? So sinusoid, if you can see into the picture, it is indicating what? The part of the capillaries formed by surrounding tissue found in the liver. So basically this fenestrated is basically, these are the type opening between the endothelial cells. So this all has to be there. Now your venous system. So we have done with your arterial system, we have done with your capillary system. Now we have came to your venules or vein. So the venous system is what? To return blood to the heart, there is a series of venules, veins, and muscular veins. So now see, there was a chain. If we can see, there was a pattern that we can see, that blood was there in the heart oxygenated that blood, and through your pulmonary artery and to your aorta, it sends to the various coronary arteries to send it to the different tissues. Now, and through capillaries also. Now what is it? That these veins, what are the roles of the veins? Is to provide blood to the heart. So it provides blood to the heart. You have to remember that. The venules have much larger lumina and thinner walls than corresponding arterioles. So basically has larger lumina and corresponding walls than your arterioles. Similarly, the veins are distinguishable from arteries and arterioles because their walls are much thinner compared to the diameter of their lumen. Okay. Now this is how the venule will look. They have a clear tunica intima layer without any elastic fibers and a tunica media, okay, media with one or two layers of muscle fiber. The tunica adventitia fuses with the surrounding tissue. So again, it will have three layers. You just have to remember that. Now this is a picture in which you can see the layers. So tunica media, tunica adventitia, okay, and these all are your veins. These all are your veins, okay. So now the veins still have three basic layers, but the elastic and muscular component are less prominent. Okay, remember that. So these all are the pictures. So this A picture is of a small vein. Okay, so this is your vein. This is your artery. Now, if you can compare this, the lining is more dense in this. This is your muscular lining. Okay, but it is less in here. Then you will see the convergence in this. C will be your C will be this will be a medium vein. This will be a medium artery. Okay, so all these things, it is just for your knowledge to understand. Okay, this is a difference. You can read it once you have read the chapter so that it becomes easy for you to memorize the points. This is again one more picture in which this is your veins, see the veins. This is your artery, okay, and this is your capillaries. So these all are small capillaries in which C is written. This is your vein, this is your artery, and this is your muscles. Okay, so remember that. Okay, now guys, we are done in this lecture. Is there anything that you need to ask? I will provide you with the lectures for sure. Is there anything do you need to ask so that we'll go to the demonstration? Say something guys so that I'll close the session.